they're going to continue to take land from other farmers, which is why the Henry case is so critical, right? It's critical to stop this thing in its tracks before litigation.
I have to assume that the way this case falls will certainly be telling of what's to come.
It could, because if you're a developer, meaning if you like building housing,
Sure.
right, and you now know that there's precedent for a whole new wave of land taking America's farms, you're obviously going to pursue that.
Right.
And I think that this is critically important as we're thinking about the MAHA agenda, right, the healthy food agenda. I'm doing a big project with Secretary Kennedy to bring healthier food into our prison system, for example.
You might not know this. I used to sell fresh produce to the Marion County Jail. For 10 years, I worked at the sales desk at wholesale distribution stage of the supply chain, moving food through a 17-state delivery corridor, as far north as Minnesota, as far south as Florida. So I saw a lot, especially all these different regions have a different cultural way to use their fresh produce. So I learned so much about our industry, but I learned so much from two accounts in particular. One was Indianapolis Public Schools, taught me a lot about federal nutrition programs within USDA school meals, and then also Marion County Jail. I learned so much about the way that our federal government is doing commodity buys and the types of food that we're moving, and the way that not only are we feeding oftentimes marginalized populations like prisoners, but also the way that we can turn that into a positive, an advocacy for our local food systems and our domestic farmers. So I learned so much. I'm really glad to hear that you're working on that.
We have our next podcast already, Lori.
I know, right? We're setting the tone right now. I love it.
And the best is Secretary Rollins, when I was launching this with Secretary Kennedy, because we're thinking deeply about this issue, Secretary Rollins immediately said, John, whatever I can do to help. That's just who she is. And that's how she is with the Henrys. So I think going back to the issue, as far as how is it going to affect local communities. So just think broadly, there in this country, there's a subtle, in my opinion, war on farmland. Some of it has to do with farmland buys near military bases. And then, of course, they don't use it as farms anymore. They use it for whatever they're using it for. Similarly, when you think about the market itself, right? So the reason Henry Farm will appraise for what it will appraise for in all likelihood is not because of its use as a farm, but because it will appraise for its uses like an Amazon warehouse near the turnpike, right? And that is happening to farmers all over this country. So there's a market war on farmland that's going to affect your listeners, right? Our consumers, our people at the farmers markets, our people in communities, because there's simply going to be fewer producing farms if we don't draw a line in the sand, as they say, to make sure that these things are not taken. And that's why the Henry Farm situation is so important. And, you know, the fascinating part, when you mentioned all the major news outlets, I had forgotten they all covered this. And one thing you hear, it's completely bipartisan.
Yeah.
Governor Murphy of New Jersey, I was amazed. He was on TV and he said, look, I'm not crazy about them trying to take a farm for this. We're looking at it. I am crazy about affordable housing. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people know that we can and will meet our affordable housing requirement. But as Governor Murphy himself talked about, this can be done in a fashion that doesn't necessarily condemn a producing farm.